You work harder than anyone you know. You show up early, you stay late, you do the work that others avoid. And yet, the bank account does not reflect the effort. The freedom does not arrive. The life you thought hard work would deliver remains just out of reach. This is not a story about laziness. This is not a story about not wanting it enough. This is a story about a misunderstanding so deep that it keeps half the world running on a treadmill that never stops and never arrives anywhere. You have been told one story your entire life. Work hard and you will succeed. But you are living proof that hard work alone is not enough, and the guilt you carry because of this truth is heavier than the work itself. You think it must be your fault. You think you must not be working hard enough. You think if you just push a little more, sacrifice a little more, the world will finally tip in your favor. This is the myth. And until you see it for what it is, you will continue pouring your life into a vessel that has a hole at the bottom. The myth says effort equals reward. The myth says input guarantees output. The myth says the person who sweats more wins more. This is comforting because it makes the world feel fair. This is comforting because it makes success a matter of will. But it is not true. And the sooner you accept that the world does not owe you a return on your effort, the sooner you can stop begging and start building. The farmer does not become wealthy because he works hard. The farmer becomes wealthy because the soil is fertile, because the rains come at the right time, because the market pays a fair price, because the seeds are of high quality, because the equipment works, because the timing is right, because 100 variables align that have nothing to do with how many hours he spends in the sun. Hard work is the price of admission. It is not the prize. Hard work keeps you in the game. It does not win the game. And the confusion between the two is why so many stay poor despite working harder than the wealthy. The wealthy do not work less. They work differently, not harder. Not smarter in the way you have been taught. They work with leverage. They work with systems. They work with capital that multiplies their effort while you trade your time for money that disappears the moment you stop trading. This is not a judgment. This is mechanics. This is physics. And physics does not care how badly you want something. You can want to fly with all your heart, but without understanding lift and drag and thrust, your wanting will not get you off the ground. The same is true for wealth. Wanting it, working for it, sacrificing for it. None of this matters if you do not understand the mechanics of how money actually grows. The invisible work behind success is not invisible because it is hidden. It is invisible because nobody taught you to look for it. When you see a tree that has grown tall and strong, you do not see the roots. You see the trunk and the leaves and the fruit. But the trunk does not support the tree. The roots do. And the roots are underground in the dark, working silently for years before the first sprout breaks the surface. The wealthy spend years building roots while the poor spend years chasing fruit. This is the difference. This is the entire difference. The wealthy build systems that produce results without their constant presence. The poor build jobs for themselves that collapse the moment they stop working. This is not about intelligence. This is not about education. This is about understanding what work actually creates value over time and what work merely exchanges time for money. You have been trained to see money as something you earn by showing up. You trade an hour of your life for an amount of currency. You trade again tomorrow, you trade again the day after, and you call this security. But it is not security. It is a leash. It is a leash that you hold yourself, believing that if you keep pulling, eventually the leash will break and you will be free. But pulling on a leash does not break it. It only tightens it around your neck. The way to break the leash is not to pull harder. The way to break the leash is to stop trading your time for money and start building assets that produce money while you sleep. This is the invisible work. This is the work nobody sees. This is the work that feels like no progress for years until one day the math flips and your assets produce more than your labor does. And on that day, you are no longer a worker. You are an owner. Not because you worked harder, but because you worked on different things. You ask yourself why you have not crossed this line yet. You have been working for years, you have been saving, you have been sacrificing, and yet the line remains uncrossed. The answer is not that you need to work more. The answer is that you have been working on the wrong side of the equation. You have been trying to earn your way to freedom. But earning has no ceiling. You can always earn more. But earning also has no floor. You can always earn less. And the moment you stop earning, you stop having. This is the trap. This is the invisible cage. Freedom is not found on the earning side of the equation. Freedom is found on the owning side. Not how much money passes through your hands, but how much money stays and grows while you are not there to supervise it. So let us talk about what this work actually looks like. Not the romantic version, not the highlight reel. The real work. The boring work. The work that makes most people quit because it does not feel like progress. There is a law, not a suggestion. A law. The law of preparation meeting opportunity. It states that luck is not random. Luck is what happens when preparation is given a chance to express itself. The prepared mind sees the opening that the unprepared mind walks past. The prepared investor recognizes the signal in the noise. The prepared entrepreneur feels the market shift before it happens because they have been studying the patterns for years. This is not magic, this is pattern recognition. And pattern recognition is not a gift, it is a debt. It is the debt you accumulate every time you study something you do not yet understand. Every time you practice a skill you have not yet mastered. Every time you save money you do not yet need. Every time you build a relationship you do not yet benefit from. You are making deposits into a preparation account. And one day opportunity walks through the door. And you either have the balance to meet it or you do not. Most people stay poor not because opportunity never comes. Most people stay poor because when opportunity comes, they're not prepared. They do not have the capital. They do not have the knowledge. They do not have the network. They do not have the track record. They do not have the systems. And so opportunity knocks and they open the door and they cannot pay the price. And opportunity walks to the next door. And the person at the next door has been preparing. They have been making deposits. They have been doing the invisible work. And when opportunity asks for the price, they hand it over and the transaction is complete. This is not luck. This is the law, and the law is merciless. It does not care that you were busy. It does not care that you were tired. It does not care that you had other priorities. It only asks, are you prepared? And if the answer is no, the opportunity moves on. You have heard the phrase, pressure creates diamonds, but pressure does not create diamonds. Pressure reveals diamonds. The carbon was already there, buried deep, compressed for millions of years. Pressure does not make ordinary rock into diamond. Pressure reveals which rock was diamond all along. This is the truth about hard times. Hard times do not make you. Hard times reveal you. They reveal what you have been building when nobody was watching. They reveal the habits you installed when times were easy. They reveal the skills you practiced when you did not need them. They reveal the relationships you maintained when you had nothing to gain. They reveal the discipline you enforced when nobody was holding you accountable. Hard times are not the sculptor. Hard times are the light that shows what the sculptor has already done. Consider two people. Both lose their jobs on the same day. One has been saving 10% of every paycheck for the last 5 years. The other has been spending everything they earned plus a little more on credit. The same pressure, the same event, two completely different outcomes. The saver has options. They can wait for the right opportunity. They can invest in training. They can start something of their own. The spender has no options. They must take the first job that comes along, any job, any wage, any condition. Not because they are less intelligent, not because they are less worthy, because they were not prepared. And preparation is not dramatic. Preparation is not heroic. Preparation is the automatic transfer every payday. Preparation is cooking at home instead of ordering delivery. Preparation is driving the paid-off car instead of the new lease. Preparation is boring. Preparation is invisible. Preparation is the work nobody applauds, and preparation is the only thing that separates those who break under pressure from those who break through. Here is another example. Two entrepreneurs start businesses in the same year. Both work hard. Both sacrifice. Both believe in what they are building. One tracks every number. They know their cost of customer acquisition. They know their lifetime value. They know their conversion rates. They know their gross margins. They do not guess. They measure. The other entrepreneur is too busy to measure. They are doing the work. They are serving customers. They are putting out fires. They do not have time for spreadsheets. They do not have time for analysis. They just need to survive. 5 years pass. The first entrepreneur knows exactly which marketing channels produce profit and which produce losses. They know which products have the highest margins. They know which customers stay the longest. They know which employees drive the most value. The second entrepreneur knows they are tired. They know they are stressed. They know cash is tight, but they are not sure why. The same market, the same economy, two different outcomes. Not because one worked harder. Because one understood that pressure reveals patterns, and patterns can only be seen if you are measuring. Pressure reveals the cracks you have been ignoring. Pressure reveals the habits that are working against you. Pressure reveals the relationships that drain more than they give. Pressure reveals the skills you should have learned but did not. Pressure reveals the systems that are broken. Pressure reveals the truth. And most people avoid pressure. They avoid situations that might expose their lack of preparation. They stay in jobs that are too small for them. They stay in cities that offer no growth. They stay in relationships that do not challenge them. They stay comfortable. And they call this wisdom. They call this being prudent. They call this protecting what they have built. But what they have built is a fragile shelter that will not withstand the first storm. And the storm is coming. It always comes. The question is not whether pressure will arrive. The question is whether you will be ready when it does. And readiness is not a feeling. Readiness is not confidence. Readiness is not optimism. Readiness is a stack of evidence. It is the savings account with 12 months of expenses. It is the skill you practiced until it became reflexive. It is the network of people who know your work and trust your name. It is the system that runs without you checking on it every hour. It is the knowledge you acquired when you did not need it. This is readiness. And this is what separates those who see pressure as a threat from those who see pressure as an invitation. Now we must talk about focus, not the motivational version, not the grind 2047 version, real focus, surgical focus. The kind of focus that says no to good things so you can say yes to the right things. You have a limited amount of attention. This is not a philosophical statement. This is biology. This is neuroscience. Your brain can only process so much information in a day. Your willpower is a finite resource that depletes with use. Your attention is the raw material of your life, and you are spending it on things that do not matter, not because you are weak, because the world is designed to steal your attention. Every notification, every headline, every alert is a small theft you do not notice because each theft is tiny. But add them up over a year, add them up over a decade, and you will find that you have given away years of your life to things that have nothing to do with your goals. The wealthy protect their attention like gold, not because they are stingy, because they understand that attention is the only resource you cannot make more of. You can make more money, you can hire more people, you can buy more equipment, you can rent more space. You cannot buy more attention. You cannot hire someone to pay attention for you. You cannot delegate focus. You either bring your full attention to the work or the work suffers. And the work that suffers is the work that builds wealth, the work that builds systems, the work that builds assets, the work that nobody else can do because it requires your specific knowledge and your specific judgment. This is non-delegable work. This is the work you have been avoiding because it is hard, not physically hard, not even intellectually hard. It is hard because it requires sustained attention over long periods without immediate reward. And your brain is not wired for that. Your brain is wired for novelty. Your brain is wired for quick hits of dopamine. Your brain is wired to scan for threats and rewards in the immediate environment. Your brain does not care about the retirement account you will access in 30 years. Your brain cares about what is in front of you right now. This is why discipline is not about willpower. Willpower is fighting your brain. Willpower is trying to override your operating system with brute force. And brute force works for a while, but it always fails eventually because the operating system is older and stronger and more patient than you are. Discipline is not fighting your brain. Discipline is designing your environment so your brain does not have to fight. Discipline is removing the distractions before they have a chance to distract you. Discipline is building systems that make the right choice the easy choice. Discipline is not heroic. Discipline is architectural. The wealthy do not have more willpower than you. They have better environments. They have removed the options that do not serve them. They have automated the decisions that drain their attention. They have built moats around their focus. Ask yourself what you are allowing into your field of vision that has no business being there. Ask yourself what notifications you have not silenced. Ask yourself what subscriptions you keep paying for but never use. Ask yourself what conversations you participate in that add nothing to your life. Ask yourself what problems you spend time thinking about that you have no ability to solve. Ask yourself what news you consume that you will forget in an hour. This is the debris. This is the noise. This is the static that fills the space where your focus should live. And you've been living with this static for so long you no longer hear it. But it is there, and it is costing you. There is a sequence, not a suggestion, a sequence. It is the growth sequence. And it is immutable. You cannot skip steps. You cannot jump ahead. You cannot accelerate the order. The sequence is this: learn, apply, evaluate, correct, persist. That is it. That is the entire architecture of mastery. That is the entire architecture of wealth. That is the entire architecture of any meaningful achievement, not talent, not luck, not connections. Sequence. Execution of the sequence over and over until the compound interest of small improvements becomes visible to the naked eye. Most people break the sequence at the first step. They do not learn. They assume they already know. They assume their intuition is sufficient. They assume experience is the same as expertise, and so they repeat the same mistakes for 20 years and call it wisdom. But wisdom is not repetition. Wisdom is correction. Wisdom is learning what does not work and adjusting. You cannot adjust what you do not measure. You cannot measure what you do not track. You cannot track what you do not value, and you do not value learning because you have been taught that learning is for school. You have been taught that education ends when the diploma arrives. But the wealthy never stop learning. They read, they study, they listen, they ask questions, they hire coaches, they attend conferences, they seek out people who know more than they do, not because they are insecure, because they understand that the world changes and yesterday's knowledge is tomorrow's ignorance. The second step is apply. This is where most people who do learn still fail. They accumulate knowledge like currency they never spend. They read books and do not implement. They attend seminars and do not act. They take courses and do not practice. They mistake consumption for production. They mistake knowing for doing. And the gap between knowing and doing is where poverty lies. The wealthy apply knowledge immediately, not perfectly, not completely, but immediately. They test. They experiment, they prototype, they launch imperfect products to real customers and learn from the feedback. They do not wait until they are ready because they know they will never be ready. Readiness is not a state you arrive at. Readiness is a habit you practice. The third step is evaluate. This is the step almost nobody takes. They learn, they apply. Then they move to the next thing without ever looking back at what they did. They do not measure the results. They do not analyze the data. They do not ask whether their effort produced the intended outcome. They just keep moving, keep producing, keep working. But work without evaluation is just motion. It is not progress. It is movement without direction. It is running on a treadmill and wondering why you are still in the same place. The wealthy measure everything that matters. They know their numbers. Not because they love spreadsheets. Because they understand that what gets measured gets managed and what gets managed gets improved. You cannot improve what you refuse to look at. The fourth step is correct. This is where humility enters the sequence. Correction requires admitting that what you did was not good enough. Correction requires acknowledging that your plan had flaws. Correction requires accepting that you were wrong. And most people cannot do this. Not because they are proud, because they have tied their identity to their work. If the work is flawed, they are flawed. If the plan fails, they are failures. This is the confusion that prevents correction. The work is not you. The plan is not you. The failure is not you. The failure is information. The failure is data. The failure is feedback, and feedback is not punishment. Feedback is instruction. The wealthy separate their identity from their output. They can look at a failed project, analyze what went wrong, make corrections, and try again without carrying the emotional weight of the failure into the next attempt. This is not coldness. This is efficiency. This is freedom. The fifth step is persist, not persevere, not endure. Persist. Persistence is not passive. Persistence is active. Persistence is choosing the same goal again and again, day after day, year after year, long after the novelty has worn off, long after the initial excitement has faded, long after your friends have moved on to other things. Persistence is the rarest quality in human beings. Everyone starts. Almost nobody finishes. Everyone has enthusiasm on day one. Almost nobody has discipline on day 1000. But day 1000 is where the compounding happens. Day 1000 is where the curve bends upward. Day 1000 is where the invisible becomes visible. Most people quit in the valley. They quit just before the incline. They quit because they cannot see the future and the present is uncomfortable. But the wealthy have learned to trust the sequence. They have learned that the valley is not a sign of failure. The valley is a sign of progress. The valley means you are still in the game. The valley means you have not quit. And as long as you have not quit, you are still in position to win. Now we must address the subject that makes everyone uncomfortable. Discipline. Not the romantic version. Not the version where you wake up at 4 in the morning and take cold showers and meditate for an hour. Real discipline. Boring discipline. The discipline of doing what you said you would do long after the feeling you said it in has faded. Motivation is a feeling. Feelings change. Feelings are weather. Discipline is climate. Discipline is the accumulated weight of thousands of decisions that were made regardless of how you felt at the time. The wealthy do not wait to feel like working. They work. They do not wait to feel like saving. They save. They do not wait to feel like investing. They invest. They have separated action from emotion. Not because they are robots. Because they have learned that emotion is a terrible guide for long-term decisions. Emotion is useful for survival. Emotion tells you to run from predators. Emotion tells you to eat when you are hungry. Emotion does not tell you to contribute to your retirement account. Emotion does not tell you to practice a skill you have not yet mastered. Emotion does not tell you to have the difficult conversation you have been avoiding. For these things, you need system, you need structures. You need habits that operate on autopilot so you do not have to decide every day whether you feel like building wealth. The most powerful system is automation, not willpower. Automation. The wealthy automate their saving. The money moves before they have a chance to spend it. The wealthy automate their investing. The contributions happen whether the market is up or down. The wealthy automate their learning. They have a daily reading habit that requires no decision. The wealthy automate their health. They have a workout schedule that is not negotiable. The wealthy automate their environment. They remove temptation before temptation has a chance to tempt them. This is not weakness. This is wisdom. This is admitting that you are human and that your human brain has limitations. You cannot rely on yourself to make the right decision every time. You are too tired, you are too distracted, you are too emotional, so you design a life where the right decision is the default decision. You design a life where discipline is not a daily battle, but a daily routine. Ask yourself what you are still deciding every day that should already be decided. Should you really be deciding every morning whether to exercise? Should you really be deciding every payday whether to save? Should you really be deciding every meal whether to eat healthy? Should you really be deciding every evening whether to work or watch television? These decisions drain your willpower. Each one is a small tax on your attention. And by the time you face the truly important decisions, your willpower is depleted. You have spent your cognitive budget on things that should have been automated months ago. The wealthy preserve their decision-making energy for the decisions that only they can make. They do not waste it on decisions that could be made once and then executed automatically forever. This is not about perfection. This is not about never slipping. You will slip, you will miss workouts, you will overspend, you will procrastinate. You are human. The question is not whether you slip. The question is how quickly you return to the discipline after the slip. The wealthy do not spiral after one mistake. They do not abandon the entire project because one day went wrong. They do not use one failure as permission to fail again and again. They acknowledge the mistake, they correct, they continue. This is the discipline of return. This is the discipline of not letting one bad day become a bad month, become a bad month, become a bad year, become a bad life. The gap between the wealthy and the poor is not the absence of mistakes. The gap is the recovery time. The wealthy recover quickly. The poor stay down. And this brings us to patience, not waiting, not hoping, strategic patience. The patience of the farmer who plants seeds and does not dig them up every morning to check if they have grown. The patience of the builder who lays one brick at a time and trusts that the wall will eventually be a house. The patience of the investor who buys assets and holds them through the cycles because they understand that time is the multiplier. Most people do not lack patience, they lack understanding. They do not understand how long things actually take. They have been trained by movies and social media to expect transformation in a montage. The struggling artist practices for 3 minutes of screen time, and then suddenly they are performing in sold-out arenas. The entrepreneur struggles for one scene, and then the next scene they are signing contracts on a yacht. This is not how life works. This is not how wealth works. This is not how mastery works. The gap between effort and result is not instant. It is not even linear. It is exponential. And exponential curves look flat for a very long time before they suddenly look vertical. Most people quit in the flat part. They quit because they cannot see the vertical that is coming. They quit because they have no evidence that the vertical will ever arrive. But the wealthy have studied history. The wealthy have studied mathematics. The wealthy have studied the lives of those who came before, and they know that the flat part is not stagnation. The flat part is accumulation. The flat part is preparation. The flat part is the roots growing underground where nobody can see them. There are seasons to wealth building, not months, not years, seasons. There is the season of planning. This is when you work and nothing seems to happen. You save money and the interest is invisible. You learn skills and the application is not yet clear. You build relationships and the value is not yet realized. This season is uncomfortable because you are giving without receiving. You are investing without withdrawing. You are working without the reward. Most people cannot tolerate this season. They demand immediate harvest. They plant seeds on Monday and expect vegetables on Tuesday. And when Tuesday arrives with nothing to show, they declare the soil barren and move to another field. But the soil is not barren. The soil is working. The seeds are germinating. The roots are spreading. The growth is happening at a molecular level that your eyes cannot perceive. And if you dig up the seed to check on it, you kill it. This is the tragedy of impatience. You destroy what you are trying to grow because you cannot tolerate the uncertainty of waiting. The season of growth follows the season of planting. This is when you begin to see evidence. The first sprout breaks the surface. The first client comes through referral. The first investment pays a dividend. The first system runs without your intervention. This season is exciting. This season provides validation. This season confirms that your work was not wasted. But this season is also dangerous because the first success can convince you that you have arrived. The first win can make you complacent. The first harvest can make you forget that the planting season must continue. Wealth is not a destination. Wealth is a cycle. You plant, you grow. You harvest, you plant again. The wealthy understand that the planting never stops. They do not rest after one success. They reinvest, they expand, they multiply. They take the harvest from this season and use it as seed for the next season. This is compounding. This is the flywheel. This is the engine that turns modest beginnings into extraordinary outcomes over enough cycles. The season of harvest is what everyone wants. This is when the wealth is visible. This is when the freedom is tangible. This is when you can stop trading your time for money. This is when your assets produce more income than your labor does. This is the goal. but you cannot skip to the harvest. You cannot arrive at the harvest without passing through the planting and the growth. And the length of these seasons is not determined by your desire. It is determined by the laws of physics and economics and human behavior. You cannot force a tree to grow faster by pulling on its branches. You cannot force a business to scale faster by ignoring its weak foundations. You cannot force investment returns to accelerate by checking your portfolio every hour. The seasons have their own rhythm. Your job is not to fight the rhythm. Your job is to align with it. Now we must discuss feedback, not praise, not criticism, feedback. Information about the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Most people avoid feedback. They do not want to know how they are really doing. They prefer the comfortable ambiguity of not knowing. They prefer to believe they are doing better than they actually are. They prefer to avoid the evidence that would force them to change. This is the opposite of wealth building. Wealth building requires constant feedback, constant measurement, constant calibration. You cannot hit a target you cannot see. You cannot correct a course you do not measure. You cannot improve a process you do not evaluate. Feedback is not optional. Feedback is the mechanism of improvement. Feedback is the difference between practicing for 10 years and getting better versus practicing for 10 years and just getting older. The wealthy seek feedback. They want to know what is not working. They want to know where they are losing money. They want to know which habits are undermining their progress. They want to know which relationships are draining their energy. They do not take feedback personally. They do not defend their mistakes. They do not explain why the feedback is wrong. They receive the information, evaluate its validity, and adjust accordingly. This is not natural. This is trained. Your ego wants to protect you from negative information. Your ego wants to believe you are already good enough. Your ego wants to maintain the comfortable story you tell yourself about who you are and what you are capable of. But the ego is not your friend in wealth building. The ego is the enemy of accurate self-assessment. And accurate self-assessment is the foundation of improvement. Ask yourself when you last sought feedback that might hurt. Ask yourself when you last asked someone to criticize your work. Ask yourself when you last reviewed your bank statements with the intention of finding waste rather than justifying expense. Ask yourself when you last measured the actual outcome of your effort against the intended outcome. If you cannot remember, you are avoiding feedback, and avoiding feedback is choosing to remain ignorant. And remaining ignorant is choosing to stay poor, not because you lack intelligence, because you lack the courage to face the truth about your current position. Measurement is the discipline of feedback. You cannot evaluate what you do not measure. You cannot measure what you do not track. You cannot track what you do not value. So what do you value? What numbers do you know without looking them up? The wealthy know their net worth, not approximately. Exactly. They know their monthly burn rate. They know their savings rate. They know their investment returns net of fees. They know their business metrics. They know their conversion rates. They know their customer acquisition costs. They know their lifetime value. They do not guess. They do not estimate. They do not approximate. They know. Because what you know, you can manage. What you guess, you cannot. You may say you are not the type of person who tracks numbers. You may say you are a creative person, not an analytical person. You may say spreadsheets are not your strength. This is not an excuse. This is a choice. And the choice is costing you. You do not need to love spreadsheets. You do not need to be an accountant. You need to know the basic arithmetic of your financial life. You need to know whether you are spending more than you earn. You need to know whether your assets are growing faster than your liabilities. You need to know whether your income is keeping pace with inflation. These are not complex calculations. These are elementary. And avoiding them is not a personality trait. Avoiding them is a decision to remain in the dark. And the dark is where poverty thrives. There's a phenomenon you have experienced but may not have named: momentum, the feeling of progress that begets more progress. The snowball rolling downhill, growing larger and faster with each revolution. The flywheel that takes enormous effort to start moving, but once spinning requires minimal input to maintain velocity. This is not magic. This is physics. This is the accumulation of small gains that eventually become visible as a powerful force. Most people never experience momentum because they quit before the flywheel spins. They push for a week, they push for a month, they push for a year. The flywheel does not move. They conclude the flywheel is broken, or they are too weak, or the goal is impossible. They walk away. But the flywheel was not broken. The flywheel was heavy. It was designed to be heavy. Its weight is what gives it momentum once it is moving. A light flywheel is easy to start and easy to stop. A heavy flywheel is hard to start and hard to stop. The wealthy build heavy flywheels. They accept the difficulty of the initial push because they understand the value of the unstoppable momentum that follows. Compounding is momentum applied to money. It is the mechanism by which small, consistent investments become large fortunes over sufficient time. Compounding is not exciting. Compounding is not dramatic. Compounding is the mathematical expression of patience. It is the reward for not spending what you could have spent. It is the consequence of leaving your money alone long enough for it to reproduce. Most people understand compounding intellectually. They do not understand it emotionally. They cannot feel the reality of what a 7% real return does to $1 over 40 years. They cannot visualize the exponential curve. They cannot internalize the relationship between time and magnitude. And because they cannot feel it, they do not act on it. They spend the dollar today because the dollar 40 years from now is abstract. The wealthy have trained themselves to value the abstract. They have learned to feel the future as if it were present. They have learned to postpone gratification, not because they are ascetic, but because they can taste the compound interest. This is not about deprivation. This is about exchange. You are exchanging consumption today for consumption tomorrow multiplied. You are exchanging the mediocre meal now for the extraordinary meal later. You are exchanging the ordinary car now for the financial independence later. You are exchanging the validation of visible possessions for the quiet dignity of invisible assets. This is not a sacrifice. This is a trade, and it is the most favorable trade available to you. No other transaction offers the same mathematics. No other transaction guarantees that every dollar you do not spend today will work for you tomorrow and the day after and the year after and the decade after, reproducing itself over and over until the original dollar has funded $1,000 of future consumption. This is the miracle of compound interest. And the wealthy do not just understand this miracle, they organize their entire lives around accessing it. The flywheel of wealth has several components. The first component is your savings rate. This is the percentage of your income you do not spend. This is the fuel. A high savings rate accelerates the flywheel. A low savings rate starves it. The second component is your investment return. This is the efficiency with which your savings are converted into more savings. This is the gear ratio. A higher return multiplies your effort. A lower return requires more fuel to achieve the same speed. The third component is time. This is how long the flywheel has been spinning. This is the multiplier that nothing else can replace. You can have a high savings rate and high returns, but without time, the flywheel is still heavy and slow. You can have modest savings and modest returns, but with enough time, the flywheel becomes unstoppable. The wealthy optimize all three components. They maximize their savings rate not by deprivation, but by design. They optimize their investment returns not by gambling, but by understanding risk and cost. And they give themselves time not by waiting, but by starting early and staying consistent. You may feel that you have started too late. You may feel that the time you have lost cannot be recovered. This is the wrong frame. The best time to start the flywheel was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. The flywheel does not care when you start. It only cares that you start and that you do not stop. A flywheel that begins spinning today and continues for 30 years will generate more momentum than a flywheel that began spinning 10 years ago but stopped after 5. The question is not when you started. The question is whether you are still spinning. The question is whether you will still be spinning 10 years from now. The question is whether you will still be spinning when everyone else has given up and walked away. Because that is when the compounding becomes visible. That is when the curve bends vertical. That is when the work of decades crystallizes into a life that looks like luck to those who did not witness the thousands of invisible days that produced it. And this brings us to the final transformation, the moment when wealth building ceases to be something you do and becomes something you are. The breakthrough is not an event. The breakthrough is a lifestyle. It is the accumulation of so many small wins that winning becomes your default state. It is the installation of so many good habits that discipline is no longer a struggle. It is the construction of so many systems that your goals are achieved automatically while you focus on higher pursuits. The wealthy do not spend their lives obsessed with money. They spend their lives obsessed with building, and money is the byproduct of building well. The wealthy do not wake up every morning thinking about how to get rich. They wake up about how to solve problems, how to serve people, how to create value, how to improve their systems, how to develop their skills, how to strengthen their relationships. And because they think about these things consistently for years, they become wealthy. Wealth is not the goal. Wealth is the evidence. Wealth is the scorecard. Wealth is the confirmation that you have been playing the game correctly. You have been taught that wealthy people are different from you. You have been taught that they have something you lack. Better connections, better education, better luck, better genes. But the truth is more uncomfortable than that. The truth is that wealthy people simply made different decisions over a long period of time. Decisions you could have made, decisions you can still make. Decisions that are available to you right now, in this moment, As you listen to these words, you can decide to save 10% of your next paycheck. You can decide to automate that transfer so you never see the money and never miss it. You can decide to learn one new skill this month that increases your value in the marketplace. You can decide to measure one number in your business or your career that you have been avoiding. You can decide to have the difficult conversation you have been postponing. You can decide to eliminate one expense that provides no real value to your life. You can decide to invest 1 hour today in a project that will produce income while you sleep. These decisions are not dramatic. They are not heroic. They are not the stuff of movies. They are ordinary. They are available, and they are the raw material from which extraordinary lives are constructed. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is not a chasm. It is a series of small bridges. Each bridge is a decision. Each decision is within your capacity. The problem is not that the bridges are too far apart. The problem is that you are not crossing them. You are standing on the shore, looking across the water, wishing you were on the other side, but not taking the first step onto the first bridge. And every day you wait, the water rises a little higher. Every day you delay, the bridges become a little harder to cross. Not because the bridges are changing, because you are getting older, your energy is diminishing, your responsibilities are multiplying. Your window of opportunity, while still open, is not infinite. There will come a day when the water is too high and the bridges are submerged and the crossing is no longer possible. That day is not today. Today the bridges are visible. Today the water is low. Today you can still cross, but today will not last forever. So what are you waiting for? Are you waiting for permission? No one is coming to give you permission. Are you waiting for perfect conditions? Perfect conditions do not exist. Are you waiting for certainty? Certainty is a fantasy. Are you waiting for motivation? Motivation is unreliable. Are you waiting for the fear to subside? Fear never subsides. Fear is the price of admission to any meaningful life. The question is not whether you feel fear. The question is whether you act despite it. The wealthy do not have less fear than you. They have more practice acting in the presence of fear. They have learned that fear is not a stop sign. Fear is a compass. Fear points toward the things that matter. Fear indicates the territory that is worth exploring. Fear is not your enemy. Fear is your guide, and the only way to make fear diminish is to walk toward it. You have within you right now everything you need to begin. Not everything you need to finish. Not everything you need to succeed. But everything you need to begin. You have enough income to save something. You have enough time to learn something. You have enough energy to build something. You have enough intelligence to figure something out. You have enough discipline to start something and continue it for more than one day. These are not small things. These are the raw materials of wealth. These are the seeds, and seeds, when planted in good soil, watered consistently, protected from pests, given sufficient time, become harvests that feed generations. Your seeds are not different from the seeds the wealthy planted when they were where you are now. The wealthy did not have better seeds, they had better soil. They had better watering habits. They had better protection systems. They had more patience. They did not give up on the seeds before the harvest arrived. The harvest will arrive. It always does for those who stay in the field. Not on your schedule, not according to your preferences, but it arrives. The seeds you planted last year will produce this year. The seeds you plant this year will produce next year. The seeds you plant next year will produce the year after. And 1 year, the harvest from all the seeds you have ever planted will arrive at the same time. That is the breakthrough. That is the moment when the compound interest of your efforts becomes visible. That is the moment when the flywheel achieves escape velocity. That is the moment when you stop trading your time for money and start living from the yield of your accumulated work. That moment is coming. It is not guaranteed. It requires you to stay in the field. It requires you to keep planting even when you cannot see the harvest. It requires you to keep watering even when the ground seems dry. It requires you to keep weeding even when the weeds grow faster than the crops. It requires you to keep protecting even when the pests are relentless. It requires you to keep harvesting even when the yields are small. It requires you to keep reinvesting even when you want to consume. It requires you to keep going when everyone else has stopped. This is the difference. This is the entire difference. Not talent, not intelligence, not education, not connections, not luck, not timing, not inheritance, not any of the things you have convinced yourself you lack. The difference is simply this: they kept going and you stopped. They kept saving and you spent. They kept learning and you assumed you knew enough. They kept measuring and you guessed. They kept correcting and you repeated your mistakes. They kept persisting and you quit. Not because they are better than you, but they understood something you have not yet fully accepted. They understood that wealth is not a destination. Wealth is a byproduct of a certain way of living. Wealth is the residue of disciplined decisions made consistently over a long period of time. Wealth is what happens when you align your daily actions with your long-term values. Wealth is the natural consequence of playing the game correctly for enough repetitions. You do not need to be exceptional to become wealthy. You need to be consistent. You do not need to be brilliant. You need to be disciplined. You do not need to be lucky. You need to be patient. You do not need to be fearless. You need to act despite fear. You do not need to know everything. You need to learn continuously. You do not need to be perfect. You need to correct continuously. You do not need to be fast. You need to be steady. The race is not won by the swift. The race is won by those who keep running after the swift have collapsed from exhaustion. The marathon of wealth building has no shortcuts. It has no secret passages. It has no elevator to the top floor. It has only steps, millions of steps, one after another, and each step is within your capacity. The question is not whether you can take the next step. The question is whether you will take the next step when you are tired, when you are discouraged, when you are uncertain, when you are afraid, when you are alone, when nobody is watching, when nobody is applauding, when nobody even knows you are still in the race. The people who achieve financial independence are not the people who never wanted to quit. They are the people who quit quitting. They are the people who decided at some point that they would rather die trying than live wondering. They are the people who accepted that the cost of entry to the life they wanted was the willingness to suffer through the life they did not want. They are the people who understood that discipline is not punishment. Discipline is the price of freedom, and freedom is worth any price. Freedom is worth the years of saving when your friends are spending. Freedom is worth the hours of study when your coworkers are watching television. Freedom is worth the uncomfortable conversations when silence would be easier. Freedom is worth the rejection that comes with every attempt to build something new. Freedom is worth the uncertainty of the path that has no guarantee. Freedom is worth all of it. Because the alternative is not freedom. The alternative is trading your life for someone else's priorities, your time for someone else's profit, your potential for someone else's convenience. The alternative is arriving at the end of your life with a full resume of work performed and an empty account of wealth accumulated, having spent your best years making other people rich while telling yourself that your turn was coming. Your turn is not coming. Your turn is now. Your turn is this moment. Your turn is the decision you make right now about what you will do with the rest of today, the rest of this week, the rest of this month, the rest of this year, the rest of your life. You have heard these words before. You have watched videos like this before. You have read books like this before. You have attended seminars like this before. You have made promises to yourself before. And then you return to your life, and the momentum of your old habits carried you back to where you started. This is not a failure of understanding. This is not a failure of desire. This is a failure of architecture. You are trying to swim upstream in a river that has been flowing in the same direction your entire life. You cannot overcome that current with willpower alone. You need to change the river. You need to change your environment. You need to change your systems. You need to change your daily routines. You need to change the people you spend time with. You need to change the information you consume. You need to change the way you think about money, about work, about time, about yourself. This is not a small project. This is the renovation of a life. It will not happen overnight. It will not happen in a week. It will not happen in a month. It will happen slowly, brick by brick, habit by habit, decision by decision. And it will only happen if you start building today and do not stop until the structure is complete. The structure is never complete. This is the final truth that separates those who maintain wealth from those who acquire it and lose it. Wealth building is not a project with an end date. Wealth building is a lifestyle without retirement. Not because you must work until you die, because the habits that build wealth are the same habits that preserve wealth. The discipline that accumulates capital is the same discipline that protects capital. The patience that grows investments is the same patience that prevents their destruction. You do not build wealth and then relax. You build wealth and then you maintain it, and maintenance requires the same attention as construction. The wealthy do not retire from wealth building. They retire from trading their time for money, but they never retire from managing their assets, from seeking opportunities, from improving their systems, from educating themselves, from contributing to the economy. This is not a burden. This is the reward. The reward of wealth is not idleness. The reward of wealth is the freedom to work on what matters to you, with whom you choose on your own schedule for your own purposes. The reward of wealth is not the absence of work. The reward of wealth is the presence of meaningful work. So what will you do with this understanding? You have been given the map. The territory is still yours to cross. The map is not the territory. Knowing the path is not the same as walking it. You can read 1,000 books about swimming and still drown the first time you enter deep water. You have read enough books. You have watched enough videos. You have listened to enough lectures. The problem is not that you do not know what to do. The problem is that you are not doing what you know. The gap between knowledge and action is where poverty lives. And the only way to close that gap is to act, not to prepare to act, not to promise to act, to act. Now, today, with whatever imperfect knowledge you currently possess, with whatever imperfect skills you currently have, with whatever imperfect resources you currently control, the action does not need to be perfect. The action does not need to be complete. The action only needs to be taken. One step, then another, then another. The path reveals itself to those who walk it, not to those who study maps from a distance. You are standing at the edge of the path. The path is not crowded. Most people never start. Most people spend their entire lives standing at the edge, waiting for conditions that never arrive, waiting for certainty that never comes, waiting for permission that is never granted. The path is open. It has always been open. It will remain open for as long as you are alive, but it does not call out to you. It does not beg you to walk it. It simply waits, patient and indifferent, for the few who are willing to trade the comfort of the familiar for the possibility of the unknown. Will you be one of the few? Will you take the first step today? Will you look back on this moment 5 years from now as the turning point, the inflection, the moment when you finally stopped preparing and started doing? Or will you look back on this moment as another video watched, another lecture heard, another opportunity recognized but not seized? The choice is yours. It has always been yours. It will always be yours. No one can make this choice for you. No one can force you to build wealth. No one can force you to develop discipline. No one can force you to persist through difficulty. No one can force you to delay gratification. No one can force you to measure your progress. No one can force you to correct your mistakes. No one can force you to keep going when everything in you wants to stop. These choices are yours alone, and they are the only choices that matter. Everything else is commentary. You know what to do. You have always known what to do. The knowledge was never the obstacle. The obstacle was the gap between knowing and doing. And the only way across that gap is to move. Not to think about moving, not a plan for moving, not to discuss moving, to move now. So move.